Yes,
Good. So this is
got
pushing
it. Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
Pushing Boundaries, a podcast about pioneering research, breakthrough discoveries, and unconventional ideas. I'm your host, Dr. Thomas R. Verney. My guest today is Dr. Gerard D.C. Kuiken, that I've been just talking to for a few minutes. Dr. Kuiken has received his PhD from the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. He has studied yoga since his youth and has given lectures on Eastern philosophy at the Delft University of Technology. He's author of Eastern Thought and Thermodynamics or of Irreversible Processes. Also, the Shiva Sutra of Vasugupta, um, which was published in 2019. And presently, he commutes back and forth between Santa Barbara and the Netherlands. Have I got that right, Dr. Kuiko?
That's quite right. So
Right, right.
it's enough.
Okay, so welcome to the
Thank you.
podcast. Thank you. I'm very happy to have you here. Um, you post some very interesting questions on your website, which just really fascinated me. And I would like to start with those if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
They are certainly not easy questions, but they are questions that we certainly should think about. And the first one is, what is thought?
Yes, because we communicate, we have meanings. You use language, different languages. But what can you know? Is there a restriction to it, or can you know everything? Can we find out that? Because if you don't do it, you don't know what your basic limitations are already. Also, you might understand your possibilities.
Mhm.
And so the point is, how do we formulate our concepts and find out what we cannot understand?
Mhm.
Still, there might be there, but you have to question that too. And so I want the first thing before anything else is about thoughts, thoughts as the result for thinking almost.
Yes.
Usually, usually people like to start with the most difficult questions. For instance, is conscious more important than matter, like Planck, for instance? He said, well, conscious is primary to matter, and matter is a derivative from conscious.
Consciousness.
Well,
Yes.
consciousness.
Yes.
That's not correct, but and I'd like to talk about that.
Okay. Yes, please do.
And but they don't want to start with a point or a simple idea of length that we can easily understand, but
Mm-hmm.
give an idea what is behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first thing that I have learned in the past is we are not taking that mechanism is so serious, although it is mentioned long time ago, even already in the Tao Te Ching. If we have a concept like long and short, that is an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
If I have only put in your last finger here,
Yes.
if you do that, you have no idea of long or short. It
No.
is not there. You cannot have a thing in itself. It comes from Kant already. Uh, you cannot know. The concept comes only to it when you compare it with something. Like the other thing, you say, well, oh, I know in the comparison I can find what is the meaning, and I have meanings of long and short.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have, and that is usually the dualistic form.
Yes.
eh? And but it is not dualistic because how do you find that long and short are different? You use the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Without the difference, there is no long or short.
Right.
And and what also happens, you create those concepts at the same moment. There is no time involved. They are creating each other at the same moment, and that you can find in the Tao Te Ching. Long short create each other, and in the what very well at the end is say even in the some version of the Tao Te Ching, that these creation, the mutual creations of the concept, that it is constant, meaning that it's always there. You cannot even get rid of it. Also, you can see that long isn't coming before short, or that the difference is becoming or before or after that. So there is no time involved. It's beyond time. Yeah. And many things, many people have already problems now. Yeah? If you, for one question that I came on long, why is there something rather than nothing? It seems that it's a deep question, but it's in fact they have made two things in itself, because if you see in this that the concepts are mutual created, then there is nothing that is needed. Nothing is needed for something. Well, it can exist. So without nothing, there is no things like something. So they create that together. And I like to discuss that a little deeper. Also, a little bit later, go into your book, then discussing mind and body. Mm-hmm. And see what you are saying and what's in the book are saying. I did a quick version to look at what you read. It's overwhelming about all the information, but focusing on that part. Now we have seen that things are not by itself, and also the statement of Planck. If you look at it is that matter and conscious, if you understand that conscious and matter are opposites, that they create each other. It is not so that one is before the other, or that there is matter without consciousness and vice versa. Now you can go a little step further. If you have a comparison with three parts, if you have, well, you can do with your fingers, the middle part is longer than the small one, but shorter than the middle one, meaning that is long and short together. Mm-hmm. We have no concept of long and short together. That is our paradoxes, or our contradictions. In mathematics, you don't want to have that, because that's with Gödel, and also they were saying it's if you have it, then you can prove anything, and so you are not going further. But a next step that I like to do is that there is, well, long-short difference, or difference long and short. There's no reason why not the other way around. And then if you superpose the other way around, then you can long short that they are both, and you get a system of long short minus short long, and that is comparable what you find in quantum mechanics in the singlet state. And why should you refer to that? Because with the singlet state, you can something, you have calculations, you can do something, and maybe it gives an idea of the possibilities that is inherent in all our knowledge. It seems, reading your book, that you know some of quantum physics, but that singlet states from the Bell states, if you see that, it turns out that it is non-local. Non-local in the meaning that it is not localized. And if you do a measurement on that total system, that is a unity, then it doesn't matter where you do it, it's everywhere. The consequence is that there is oneness basically. The other part, and that comes out of the calculation of the system, is that as long as you don't do any measurements, all possibilities are there with the same probability. Yes. Meaning, as long as you have not chosen anything, that everything is there. But also you find out that, like the difference, you need a distinction, and the distinction makes it that you have done a choice. people have the question, yeah, is that choice, is that a hidden variable? You didn't know it, but well, you were not sure about it, but it's a hidden variable that forces you to do it. So the question is there a free will for human beings? If you do it mathematical or in the system as a laboratory, you can put in all your instruments, but still you might be guided without knowing that. So, but there is a big Bell test has to be performed in 2018. There's 100,000 people involved, Bellsters, who had, with all their choices, make a choice for the instrument somewhere in the world, and all the top laboratories, Planck, for instance, and Zeilinger, and you name all the big names, they are all involved in it. And they make a game for the Bellsters, they called it Bellsters, generating zero and ones. And doing that, they find out that the conditions for the Bell test, that certainly there is freedom of choice, and you can quest further how wide is that, but this is a real big thing. Those 100,000 human beings generated data that can be processed fast enough. The number of data is 100 million, and they tested all the known locality and other tapes too. So I think it is an important article and investigation, and I don't hear much about it. So if you now look back to long, short, and our notions, remembering that as long as you don't have make a distinction or a difference or directly, that all possibilities are there, but by doing it and make a distinction in that, you have make a choice, and then you have the responsibility that comes with it, and also you have you what did you want to say? Making that choice, there you have chosen a particular one, and that is your choice with your responsibility. And there's no the deterministic view. I don't like that, because even the balance equations of physics, they are very limited. If you know, well, if you've done some physics, you know, even you cut off and you put in the boundary conditions or what you don't know. So, but it is also a question. Most of the question is something is nothing. Our balance equation, the energy equation, name it, something is nothing. And that is an important part. That is like the distinction. And then you see that in all the things that you are doing, nothing is involved. And so, if you don't, if that is clear, then I'd like to see you can do that also with that problem of body and mind. There, the body is three-dimensional, and the other one you cannot place them. There's nothing, so it cannot interact. That is the usual version. But looking now back to the difference, if you see there are difference between body and mind, and you write your book, the embodied mind, it is that they are already connected, because seeing body and mind as opposites, that is because you notice that there is a difference. They create each other together. So it is the embodied minds, but as my friends, I told him that I had a talk with him. He said, "Yeah, but you have a minded body. Yeah? That's also the other version around." Mm-hmm. And then you see also in your book, I see many the placebo effect. It's all there. At the end of the book, I see that you refer to the people who using quantum physics, but then they locate it. They have suddenly located what they before say that you cannot locate at all, the consciousness of the mind. Mm-hmm. And then it is in the page numbers about that. And so the localized mind, that is not possible. You make it also there together. So there's no problem in fact. And you see all your experience and all the things, you see that the mind is already embodied.
Mhm.
But also the body is minded, is full of mind, because that is the mutual creation of both. And that newest part that you mentioned at the end, that is localizing in some part in the mind or in the special things, even outside in a computer system, but that is not possible. It goes. There's no mind-body problem. It's a mind-body problem if you see this distinction, and it in fact always is the mind and the body are connected from the very beginning, and it is
Yes,
also unlimited.
yes, I say that. Yes, I believe that. That's true. Can we get back to that Max Planck quote
Yes,
that you started with? So you say that Max Planck regarded consciousness as fundamental and matter as derived from consciousness.
yes.
So did he mean that at the very beginning of the world, so to speak, there was consciousness and everything else is derived from that? Is that what he meant?
That is what how people interpret him always. That it is either the conscious is first, and matter is following from the conscious. I had a friend, or not a friend, Lothar Schever. He wrote a book about the infinite potential. He's a chemist. He died in the 2006 or something like that. But in his book, he referred to the first proton that we have, the hydrogen. And hydrogen, you see, well, the quantum is that you have all kinds of levels, yeah?
Mhm.
And that you don't see, only that you can jump to that. Yeah? And it turns out that you landed on that part, but without the thing that you cannot see, you cannot even land. But also, he showed that there is a preference in the for the hydrogen in what level to jump to. For the fourth level is not as popular as the higher one, 5. There are more, there is not equally distributed. So you might say maybe there's a proto consciousness already in the very beginning. And otherwise you have the problem, why should it start at some place or some time? It must be, if you have that part, it is always, it is embodied, but it's also life. And then you refer that's with the consciousness, we are referring to a self. Well,
So is consciousness used here like God? Is that that what
sometimes like it like that. Yeah, it's a more acceptable name for other people, but uh, because then, and also you see here, God, if you mention that, then you have that you have made the distinction.
yes.
It is if you can mention him, you have already restricted it, and it is not even worth to consider it. Because it's if you do that, and people say, well, if I could understand him, if that was possible, it's not worth trying to find it. Yeah? And even if people say, well, you are against God, also you have like Kuhn a time that you have to prove that there is no God. If you are a religious person, you don't mind, you have even already mentioned the word God, so you're speaking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, you have accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. So, and consciousness, if you see, in my view, it is, if, for instance, let's first say in the old Upanishads is a saying about the self. You say, well, consciousness is a form that you know the self, but people don't say, what is the self? And that self is defined in the oldest Upanishads.
Yes.
And they say that the sense of self, if you that have self, is consists of prana, the life force, manas, mind,
Mm-hmm.
and vaj, speaking words.
Mm-hmm.
Vaj is in the Indian philosophy is the creator for all things.
Mm-hmm.
That matter what. So you have a driving force. uh, yeah, I don't know what that is, but if you follow that part, then you have the mind who makes a distinction. uh, And the awareness of that distinctions, I would call that consciousness. So consciousness comes after that. And you mentioned that also in your book, that conscious is an after the effect.
Mm-hmm.
And also that you say consciousness in your book is a faculty of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, but later on it turns around,
Mm-hmm.
and the mind is something of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, well, I have difficulties with that. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if you mind that, and what you do, what I find out by
Yes.
you, that consciousness and free will are
Mm-hmm.
qualifications of the mind.
Um,
You
not
said so.
not qualifications. Um, it's another word. They're functions of the mind, not qualifications. Functions.
Ah, yeah. So, okay. So I like to see it that
Yeah.
the basic ideas is exist by putting a distinction.
Mm-hmm.
That's an act.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the laws of form, maybe you know that book, Laws of Form,
No.
from
No.
Brown. Well, that's a mathematician who said, well, and say laws of form, making it without the distinction, there is nothing. That's what the old wisdom say. Without the distinctions, you have no existence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And um, the qualifications of the minds. So for me, is this at its start that you can make a distinction,
Mm-hmm.
and which creates a mutual creations of opposites. And then you have consciousness that is aware of that differences.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, yes, yes. That
And
makes.
so that comes then behind that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we can collect that, that's growing,
Mm-hmm.
but it is the mind that have the capacity to make a distinctions.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that it is forced by that we are living.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you have your comments about that?
Yeah, well, sure. Um, I but before I make a comment, I'll throw in something else. Um, do you know Mike Levin of Tufts University? Do you know him or do you know of his writing? Mike Levin, Tufts University.
No, I
No.
don't think so.
Okay. Okay. He's fantastic. He has written about xenobots and chimeras, and he works he works at the interface between computers and living organisms. So I asked him about life, and he said, and I will quote because I don't want to misquote him, to be honest, I spend very little time thinking about the definition of life per se. I focus on cognition. If I if we sort of make a Venn diagram, do you know what a Venn diagram is?
Yes,
If we sort of make a Venn diagram of all the things that are on the cognitive spectrum and all the things that are alive, how do those two sets interact? I tend to think, he said, I tend to think that cognition is the more important category because I think there are many things that are probably not alive, but nevertheless have cognition and vice versa. What do you think
yes.
of that?
Yes, but you see, then he also noticed that they are opposites and that it is in the middle, the balance, that you find both parts.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you don't do that, you have not the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Usually, people took one part of it.
Yes.
They like the long one,
Yes.
not the short one.
Yes.
But they forgot that the short is already inherent in the notion of the long.
Right.
So you cannot split that. And that's in the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, this the pairs of opposites. They say
Yeah.
become free of the pairs of opposites.
Right.
And it is not an easy
No.
thing. And
No.
when you don't do it, you don't go further.
Yeah.
So there's these sorts out, but in the Bhagavad is only in one sentence is action. If you don't understand that action and inaction, and you don't understand that the action in action and the inaction in action. Yeah,
Yes, because
it,
Newtonian physics, which is what we grew up with, which is what our culture, like 100, believes in, it's all about action and reaction. It's never,
yes,
it's never in the middle.
no, that is, but that is also the sign of is in our equations.
Yes,
We
yes,
never think about that the sign is balance is both. You do it such that both are valid.
yes.
And deterministic thing is usually you see the balance equation.
Mm-hmm,
It's more a condition that some movement has
mm-hmm,
to
mm-hmm,
apply to it, but it's not describing the motion. And people, and then you have no trouble with all kinds of that you have more solutions in a deterministic equation
mm-hmm,
because it's simple, of not sim, yeah, sim. It's a condition that physics, if you look to the physics, has to apply to that equation that you're writing down.
mm-hmm,
And these are all kinds of limitations you put in already in the beginning.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit. You have this fascinating topic that I do not understand in the least, which is from bit, it from bit from qubit. Can you tell
Yes.
me what that means?
Well, you see, Wheeler, John Archibald Wheeler,
Yeah.
um, he is almost a student of Einstein. He is very, very well known. He is not living anymore, but he had all kinds of things. And I think even dark matter came from him. Uh, uh, well, anyway, he is very precise. He wrote an article and all the time that it's the kind of information it is in mathematics is only 0 and 1, but he sees it as very wide. Even it can be of our even our space. It can be everything that you can think. And his wish is that it would be so simple at the end that we at the end, if we understand that we have our information, that it is created so simple that we say later, but how is it possible that we have overlooked that?
Mm-hmm.
And then part of it is for me is that if the bit is also 0 and 1, and classically, the difference between classical and quantum is that as if you have a qubit, and then the 0 and 1 is in all possibilities. If you look, for instance, the classical bit is if we have a sphere with a north pole and south pole, then the
Mm-hmm.
classical is the north and the south pole, but the qubit is all the possibilities you can find with a combination of 0 and 1, and that's like the whole rest of the whole sphere, while the bit is our opposites. And those opposites can, in also in Wheeler's thing, anything you can imagine or even find out or think. So, in my view, is making the mutual creation of opposites is the basic thing you do, and that's a bit form. because you have the other one with the qubits, with all the possibilities of the whole sphere, making a distinction you have to choose in one direction or another one, that doesn't matter. But then with putting that limitation on all the possibilities, you have chosen one opposite, one bit. Usually we have the bit only well in in the mathematics, but his form of it includes even space-time itself.
How would you describe what you do? I mean, would you say you're a philosopher, a scientist, a physicist? How would you categorize yourself?
I don't know. And no, because well, what I have done,
Yeah.
I came when I have I started with looking in yoga. I did it when I was
Yes.
15 years. Then
Yes.
I was in the army in the 20s, 90, 1960, 1965,
Hmm.
no, 1962 to 1964. Then I found out a teacher who did yoga.
Yes.
And so I went to him, and of course, I was more interested in what is the background. So
Mm.
I got some lecture notes from him, quite a lot, and I studied that, and that is about the difference. So Sweetness is the name, and had that mutual creation. That mutual creation is in the second verse of the Tao Te Ching.
Mutual creation. What do you mean by that?
But
What do you mean by mutual creation?
mutual, that the one creates the other.
Oh, okay.
It is that they are not separated, like long and short. They come together at the same moment beyond time. There is no preference that short is before long or the other way around. And in the Tao Te Ching, they say, well, long and short create each other. If you see beautifulness, they still have ugliness. These kinds of things. So it is not that, and the
Yeah.
tendency is to put one of it
Yes.
and not see the whole.
Yes.
And so, just like is your book, you are looking at to the embodied mind. You look to one side of it, but there's also the other side. And you give a lot of evidence for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, in mind body, if you look there as opposites, you see in this is that your mutual creation of mind and body, or the opposite, mutual creation of body and mind.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
so there is no separation that is put by Descartes, because that one is
Mm-hmm.
blocked by, you can put
Mm-hmm.
in a box, and the other
Mm-hmm.
one is can not have, so they can never met each other,
That's
but
right.
they have already met before
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in their secret life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So, so you studied yoga, and then what did you do?
Oh yeah, then I went. I did civil engineering first,
Yes.
and then I went studying that. Then I was asked to work with famous man Kuiken about buckling and shell theories, etc., mechanics. And then I find another field more important, irreversible thermodynamics and rheology. And then I wanted to give at Delft talks about Eastern thought. So
How
I
did
give their lectures.
how did you get into Eastern thoughts? How did you get there?
Oh, I ordered the lecture rooms,
Yeah.
and that the secretary could type out the handouts, and I
Uh,
ordered
what
a
was
big.
it? What was it about Eastern thought that
It's about what is thinking, what is space time, what is life and death. And so I told there in those time about, and there was a lot of attention, but the philosophy department didn't like it so much. So I was a little bit naughty,
mm-hmm.
I must say.
Mm-hmm.
And so Well, there come quite a lot of people. I wrote even an article, uh, the reappraisal of nature, published by the Department of Mechanical Engineering,
Oh, okay.
and when that was peer reviewed by the Department of Physics,
Yes.
and the reviewer called me up and said, "Well, are you wise to do that? It's not good for your career."
No.
Yeah, and of course I noticed that, and so they sometimes they have a size more for the other person
Yeah.
because I was a little bit naughty.
Yes. Yes.
And then so okay,
Yeah.
then
And then,
I worked at the university, gave lectures in thermodynamics, and
yeah.
wrote a book about thermodynamics,
Right.
and didn't do much about that part. Also, I was involved with the unions, and
Mm-hmm.
so because people are not always nicely treated.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure. But then
Yeah.
how did you get into this much more rarefied atmosphere of
I was lucky. I had my own laboratory,
yeah.
and my I have Professor Merrick and Professor how is it, Hinze. They are very liberal. Hinze, for instance, he gave me his books, and turns out that he followed uh, well spiritual writings from before the Second World War, and so we could do a lot of things. And because we had an you could do things without they want to kick you out, but I had much more supporters to get me
Mhm.
in, and so
Good, good.
but at the end I say, well, goodbye. But then that was a long time ago.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So, and during the last 10 years, what have you done?
Well, I wrote books.
Yes, show me, please. Bhagavad Gita. Yes,
Yeah.
okay. Yes,
This is the first part of the book is about uh, what is the date of the Bhagavad Gita. I had a different one about
oh,
that. I also, it's against the caste system, showing where
yes,
does the caste system come
yes,
for.
yes.
I included biology, and that you can see it in the DNA of the Indian people, of what caste, the caste that they are from. And on ResearchGate, you can download it from there.
Mhm.
And it is, well, 2,000 times downloaded. It's not so bad. The other one, um, the this is Shiva Sutra.
Yes,
That's a short one.
yes.
I made a translation. People can download it. It is the Saivism organization sees that as an authoritative translation. Uh, on the ResearchGate is almost 90,000 times seen or downloaded
Mm,
in within 3 years. So that is
amazing, amazing.
so so I make people happy about it. It's all free. You can take them.
Mhm.
Then I have this one. That is my translation of the
Yes.
Bhagavad Gita, a part of it,
Is that from Sanskrit?
from Sanskrit to English. But you see, you have always to believe the translator. And so I don't like that. I want to see what it is.
Yes.
So I did that. But so I give what I did, my choice of the translation, but I give a dictionary, also included all the forms, so that without any knowledge of Sanskrit, you can make your own translation.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you don't want it, you can see what is the background. Even in Sanskrit, you have a root of the word, but beyond the root is also a sense that is included in that verb. I
Right.
all give that so you can see a deeper and understand better what might understand it better then. So it is a dictionary of 250 pages in the book of 500 pages.
Mhm.
And the first part I am writing down, that is the first part, what is thinking and entanglement. Second part, what is space-time. And the third part, what is life and death. And that's the introduction. And then with an explanation of the sentences in the Bhagavad Gita. I hope to finish that this year.
So since you have written those three chapters, Um, have you changed your mind about anything that you had written?
No,
No?
because you have to find out. You can say, well, can I against that with the differences and the two opposites? You cannot. But even if I ask you to find something else, you are applying the system. So you are hooked to it. And the other exceptions that we cannot understand, you cannot understand, but might be there, but you cannot say that it's not there because you have not, you can only say there's a distinction or a difference, you have the existence and the notion. And without that, you, you if you don't put a limitation, you can experience the wholeness. And
Yes.
then you can have a mystical experience. So if you want to do that, simple stop putting limitations.
Mhm.
Simple stop making differences.
So is our language, the very language that we speak, does that get in the way of
Oh
really
yeah.
understanding life?
Think already, for instance, that um, well, for instance, in English, to think, yeah,
Yes.
it forces you to say who is thinking
Yes.
or what is thinking.
What is he thinking?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's bound that you have a verb that might be by itself, but you cannot understand that
Yeah.
because it's like that wholeness. Yeah? For instance, it rains. Uh, yeah, yes, it's not water it rains, but you can have in thinking also is a situation that you have that deeper understanding. But your language forces you to do it.
Mhm.
And
So,
so many, yeah, and well,
so
uh,
if you have life, death, and kind of connected it
yes,
with a little arrow or something, life, death, what would be a better way of stating that? Because that is still two opposites, right? Life and
yes,
like short and long, right? It's the
yes,
same problem.
yes.
Okay, so what would be a better way of thinking about that?
Well, you first, if you see that there's also opposites,
Hmm.
and I can quote them for other books, but if you want to understand this,
Hmm.
you have to understand life.
Okay.
You have to understand what is space-time.
Hmm.
But you want, if you have the situation when you are dead, is implies then the opposite of space-time. So what you do here in time occurs there immediately. You
Hmm.
cannot lie there. You can see what people think and there are contexts like that.
Hmm.
But and on the other hand, people always wanted easy to live this, but uh, they don't want to find out what is it here. For instance, what I try to promote or to say that you are working with differences, that you are forced to that. That if you want to understand the other part, you have to see how that looks and find out people or persons or personal experience.
Hmm.
What happens then?
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
Uh, so if you want to separate them, there's
Yeah.
a question: why do you want to separate them? Don't
Right.
they increase each other? Without that, there will no creation of any life. This is needed for life too.
Hmm.
And the personal experience of dying, yeah, well, we are sure that everyone will be part of that. So if you don't want to understand it, you still learn it at some point. And some people even don't know that they are dead.
Yes. Yes. Now, you did say that you are married, right?
Yes,
Do you have any children?
no.
No children. And
I
you,
married her when we have both no children. So that is,
So, and are your parents still alive?
No,
What did your father do?
my father was a tailor.
A tailor.
Yes.
Did he understand what you were trying to do with your
At
life?
that time, no, he was not involved in that.
No,
No,
no.
it's
Did
it
he
was.
have did he have any influence on your life?
Oh, certainly.
In what way?
Well, his kindness and try to help people.
Hmm.
That's some those parts you find, and of course you find later on that your parents are much more valuable than you
Yes,
ever have
yes,
considered, because you
yes.
have is your own life, but they are wonderful. so,
Mhm.
so if you have any negative thoughts about your parents or mothers, or don't do it. Find if that is there, find to release that. Otherwise, you block yourself.
You're so right. Do you remember any advice that your mother or father gave you that made a difference in your life?
Not really simple how I would behave. My mother was uh, we my mother and father were separate, divorced,
Yes.
and the children were assigned to the father, what was unusual
Hmm.
in that time.
Yes, that is unusual. Uh-huh. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I had a sister who is dead now, and I have a nephew, the child of my sister.
Uh-huh. 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 So my question, I ask most of my guests this question. What does being human mean to you?
To be human,
Take your time.
to be human means that I try to express what I know about the universe,
Yes.
being, seeing, if you have observer and observed that they are totally connected on the same reason, there is no other. So I know from deep thinking about that we are all together. So I don't intend to harm anyone. I might have harmed many people, but then I have to solve that later on. So I want to have, I would like if people can see that because the observer and the observed are also creation of each other, that everyone is connected. And if
Mhm.
they really understand that, why should you harm yourself?
So would you say that that's the most important thing you learned in your life, that everybody is connected?
Well, certainly that is one of the parts, but not everybody. But I want to
Yeah.
go further.
Okay, go
Also,
ahead.
we are the expression of the universe that want to express itself, and
Mhm.
how it does it. That's in Sanskrit. You have ways of saying that.
So do you believe in an afterlife?
It's not afterlife; it's a part of life, and it is here and now. And also, what people afterlife is that are you still living when you are dead? No, you are expressing yourself still. And when you are dying, first is that you collect all what you have done on this part, and that takes some kind before the body is gone, really free from everything. You collect that, then you see the first time you have to balance that part. There's a might be an unhappy part, might be an happy part. At some point, you are become well annoyed about it. Is not, and then you want to have questions. The moment you have questions, you are open to receive other information, and then you have levels of understanding. And well, it goes on and on. And at some point, you try to become bored because you want to clean your own mirror. Your mirror is not clean, and you have to do that.
So is this sort of like Hinduism that you are speaking of?
The Hinduism.
Yeah.
they do have these kinds of things too.
Yes.
And I read their books.
Yes.
And but I am in the happy situation that I have direct information from those experiences by people who do it, my teacher, and so I am always, if I want to talk about that, I'm at the same time very reluctant to do it because you are talking about something that most people have not the faintest idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what are you doing? Pushing in your thoughts to people who in one way want to know, but if it is too complicated, you have to study or they don't like the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
I am a little bit reluctant, but
Of
in the
course.
book that I
Yeah.
want to finish, I have written down and also the process, what happens when you are dying and become born again.
What's the name of the book that you're working on?
Oh, that is uh, this volume 1B,
Oh yes, Bhagavad Gita. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm writing a form 1A of
Oh,
that. I wrote the book first, the big one.
yeah.
Let me see where I have that.
Sure.
This is what I first did.
Oh boy, Gita. Yes.
Yeah? And then I'm never satisfied, but that's
Mhm.
typical for people who do
Yeah,
some research.
of course.
So I was thinking that's the other way around then, started with number 3, the last one, because I have written down that people are talking
Hmm.
and writing and translate that
Yes.
the original Gita that I have in a shorter form than the usual one.
Yes.
I translated that into Sanskrit too, and so I put that first.
Hmm.
Then I want to have that I have not to worry about the translations anymore before I give
Right.
an explanation of it.
Right.
So I
Right.
wrote this, and then these 3 parts came out from the other way around, and I'm almost finished, but I was stopped doing that because the question from Max Planck came up: consciousness
Yes.
and matter. So I have to find out what people thought about it, and in the scientific and medical network, they are very keen about that. So I spent the time about it, and also I get an invitation by the Indian Council of Philosophical Research. They
Yes.
give to give a talk there. So I gave a talk there, and then later on, the scientific Galilei Commission they
Hmm.
invited me, so I gave a
Hmm.
talk there discussing these parts, not about life and death,
Hmm.
but about this idea that you're mutual creation of opposites, that you cannot ex- uh, do anything that is not bounded by that
Right.
basically yeah, mechanism that is your instrument that you have and you work with. And well, that's how I do.
Well, please let me know when it's finished and when it's published so that I can tell our listeners about it.
Yes,
Let me know, okay? We can publicize it a little bit.
that would be nice.
Sure, sure. Be happy to do that. So we'll have to come to a conclusion here today. Thank you, Dr. Kuiken, for a most stimulating and informative discussion. Not always easy, but I think it's worthwhile to pay attention, to listen to it perhaps a few times, and to understand because there's a lot of deep thought involved here, and I really appreciate all the work that you have put into this, Dr. Quicken. Next week, my guest will be Dr. Robbie Davis Floyd, excuse me, from the Department of Anthropology, University of Texas, Austin. She's an American cultural, medical, and reproductive anthropologist, researcher, author, and international speaker, primarily known for her research on childbirth and midwifery. We shall address the question, can obstetrics be humanized and decolonized? So please tune in next week. And in the meantime, thank you and be well. And thank you, Dr. Kuiken.
Well, thank you for your kind words. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.